out for our little Cornish lair, deepest mid-Cornwall. Heading this time to Damerels to talk about things which will be made clear at some later point. Just for the first part of this little bit, I'll give it my first impressions of this diddy little tank bag you see below me. I'll perhaps do a little walk around and a few photos separately, just so this is really quite small, so big enough for documents, bits and pieces, maybe a small waterproof or extra pair of gloves perhaps, that might be useful. Just to my local lanes here where I can talk reasonably freely without worrying about wind volume on this helmet, which isn't very good because it's quite airy. Good for riding in the summer, but not so good for trying to vlog. I'm currently setting up the vlogging on my Shoei Neotech, so that should be good. So anyway, back to the little Oxford tank bag. It's a magnetic one, so bearing that in mind, I also bought some of the anti-slip sheet, which should prevent any scratches to the paintwork, and I made sure all was very clean, so that's now in place. The reason why I bought it is I've got this forthcoming trip up to France, or down to France, from Cornwall, where I'm going to pay my respects to a family member who was killed in the Normandy landings, where I was nearly killed there by the other driver. It's normal for here. Yeah, so it was a very interesting story. He was on board a landing craft headquarters ship called LCH-185, which was unfortunately struck a mine on the 25th of June 1944, losing most of the members of the crew, apart from a few, including one chap called Patrick Thomas, who's later been the subject of a short film, a book by the archaeologists involved in finding the boat, but the main interest for me is that a relative of mine, a second cousin, Geoffrey Dunkley, first cousin to my mother, was on board and sadly perished. He was, I think, a radio operator or a telegraphist, whichever. It was quite a skilled job. Basically their job was to coordinate things on D-Day and afterwards, and they'd already been involved in several campaigns, so the ship had been quite a few places. But yes, it was a sad story, and there's a memorial been built at the with the John Henry Phillips, the archaeologist, who sort of managed to get that moving, as well as the film looking for the boat, which sadly hasn't yet been found, but I'm sure that's ongoing. And I'd like to pay my respects there, and of course also go to the British War Memorial at Normandy, which was something that Harry Billinge, who's a local to me, and I was a friend of his too, from trips to the market where he was fundraised, and I talked to him about this place. So yes, there's a bit of a dual purpose for this for me, but also it's a good excuse for riding a motorbike down the Cherbourg Peninsula to the Normandy coast, and then do that, stay a few nights in a nice little B&B, and then come home again. So yeah, first big trip on this particular bike actually, and certainly the first trip I've done since about 2017, maybe 2018, I'm not quite sure which, but yeah, they were only one night camping trips. This is a 3-night affair, going across the Channel, Brittany ferries, not those blasted P&O criminals. Yeah, so you got a chance hopefully to do a bit of vlogging on the way, if I can get myself set up properly, shoot some video vlogs for my photography channel while I'm there, and enjoy getting away from random illness, as things have been a little bit iffy for me recently. Physical health hasn't been great, and my mental health has been a little bit iffy too, suffering from loss of confidence and lack of self-esteem mainly. I'm sure that's not an unfamiliar scenario for many people. So riding a bike is definitely something that means a lot to me. Yeah. Anyway, so enough of that for now. I'm going to stop just up here, switch the recording off, because the rest of it is just on bigger roads, and you don't really want to see that. So I'll perhaps pick it up again a little later, depending on whether I make any progress with what I'm trying to do at Damrells. Well, let's go home. Back roads, avoiding the dual carriageway because they're not much fun, especially on a windy day like today. So I'm riding home from Damrells, disappointed, because I thought, well, the classic 350 could be the ideal bike for me for those gentle rides about the roads we have in Cornwall, because let's face it, we have very few roads of any significance, certainly dual carriageways at a minimum, and I don't do that many long trips these days. So yeah, roads like this you can enjoy at a moderate pace, as I am at the moment, mainly to avoid the wind noise getting excessive. But yeah, so I sat on the Classic 500 and actually feels really comfortable, like the seating position, the angle of your feet, where your feet are. It's got one big disadvantage for me, and that is that I can't reach the side stand because it's a sort of shiny thing with no little knob on it to get your foot around. So you just have to sort of, and to do that you have to have your foot really planted on the other side, and to be quite honest, it wasn't. Now, I do know that there is a low seat for the 350, and that takes it down 32 millimetres, which is a good chunk, it's over an inch, and there's also some shocks which are Hitchcock's motorcycles sell from Hagen, 15 millimetres shorter, and that between them will give you a 47 mil decrease, so almost 2 inches, give or take, and that will probably be enough to allow myself to plant that foot whilst engaging the side stand. But here's a risk to imagine, actually, because I don't suppose the dealers is going to allow me to modify a bike and then decide whether or not I really want to buy it. Yeah. I mean, I could order a low seat and take it in, fit it. Oh, that would make a good photograph. And then see if that makes enough difference. Again, I'll have to find out whether I could return it if it wasn't any good. If I talk to the dealer, perhaps they'll see my dilemma and they might be able to assist. I'll slow down again because that's probably making the audio a bit crappy, which it does with this helmet over a certain speed. It is a windy day as well. Yeah, if you can't hear this, I might just overdub. Oh, it's a beautiful afternoon, fluffy white clouds. You can see the clay country there to the left. All those hills are artificial, with a buzzard in the distance. There's many buzzards here. You don't see so many of the other birds of prey, but there are things like peregrines around the coast. There are owls. We have lots of owls where I live. Bloody things, bloody noisy at night. And they don't just make the to-wit-to-woo noise, they also emit all kinds of screeches and things when they're hunting, which can be quite alarming because they sound like humans almost sometimes. So we're going through St Stephen, or just about to come into St Stephen. This is again, we're in clay country here. This is it's now pleasant suburbs of St Austell, really, realistically. It's kind of some areas in St Stephen are maybe a little bit, what should we say, they suffer economically, I think, certainly. So there's certainly quite a few people who are perhaps might be struggling at the moment with the current issues. It's got two garages in it, all belong to the same company, Hawkins. Church and so on. So worth exploring to think about the history, because this is all part of what we call clay country. So 100 years ago, this is 200 years ago, centre of the economy. Of course, now very few employed in the clay or other mining industries. So consequently, wages are not high. Many jobs are in the service or tourist sectors, and they typically don't pay well, have bad hours. Of course, there's endless shortages of workers, huge shortages of workers at the moment. Anyway, so I think the next step is to pick up the phone, talk to the dealer and say, look, I am interested in this bike, but what can we do? Anyway, enough for now. Thanks for watching this particular groan and mumble of Meanderings. See you in the next one. Bye for now.